Hello everybody, MegaZardX here. Back at it again to give y'all another very exciting collection reflection video where I take the time out to just go through my whole entire gaming library. It could be a game, could be a limited edition, could be a console. But today we're going to be talking about none other than Pokemon Stadium for the Nintendo 64, because this game right here was like the definition of what a Pokemon game could possibly look like on home consoles, or the closest thing to like a mainline game, until like what, years later, until we finally managed to get like Sword and Shield, or like the Let's Go games, but I would say more so Sword and Shield on the Nintendo Switch though. So I have a lot of cool stories and stuff to say about this game, my overall experiences on this game, because this one was definitely a timeless classic, at least on the Nintendo 64 though. So if you really like this video, make sure to go ahead and hit that like button, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight up into this video. Pokemon Stadium. Now, this was a game that I didn't necessarily get in the heyday when I had most of my other Nintendo 64 games like Mario Party 3, Mario 64, and the list kind of goes on and on. I don't think it wasn't until like around the Wii era, my brother happened to run across this at like our local mom and pop store and stuff, and he was like, oh, it's Pokemon for the Nintendo 64. He had like a very limited Nintendo 64 games and stuff. Like we also had Wave Race and stuff like that though. But he was like, oh, okay, cool. I always want to play a Pokemon game on the Nintendo 64. So he managed to get that, and I was surprised he picked that one. I was like, all right, I might as well go hands-on with this game though too. And man, this is definitely a classic, at least when in the Nintendo 64 era. Luckily now we have access to playing this game via, the Nintendo Switch online servers. Well, this along with the sequel game, Pokemon Stadium 2. But the first original Pokemon Stadium one is the one I have more nostalgia with, because that's the one I grew up with. And that one just only focused on Pokemon found within the Kanto region. So, the original Pokedex of 151 and stuff. So obviously within this game, there's like two different ways how you can kind of play it. You either play it with rental Pokemon, which, that's the way how it was kind of intended on originally. And then also, if you happen to have like one of those Nintendo 64 transfer packs and stuff, and if you had an original copy of like red, blue, or even yellow, yes, you can also plug up, your game to the Nintendo 64 and then be able to actually use the Pokemon that you actually went through and trained, and be able to use it on this game right here though, which honestly, thinking back at it, I was like, that would have been such a great feature for me to be able to use. But I never owned an original Game Boy growing up, or even like the Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow. It wasn't until like they released those games on Virtual Console on the Nintendo 3DS until I was actually able to play the original first gen games. I really had my Kanto experience with like Fire Red and stuff on the GBA way back when, but the original Game Boy, I don't really have too much nostalgia for it, because it's just one system I just didn't grow up with though. But the cool thing with this one game in particular is, if you happen to have the transfer pack in one of those games, one of the options right there on the home screen next to the little the Game Boy system up in there, it actually allowed you to play those games on your Nintendo 64, so on a bigger screen on your home console back in the day, which honestly, that sounded really cool, and it was kind of a way to kind of get around, just having Pokemon games as a only handheld game system though. So that was kind of cool. And then you being able to actually use those Pokemon you trained and leveled up versus the rental Pokemon, which for me and probably a lot of other people out there, we grew up on the rental Pokemon. I think my one little interesting tidbit I would say, and it was like a little bit more so of an annoyance, is in terms of you renting out these Pokemon, obviously you can rent out almost every Pokemon up in the game, including like the legendary birds and stuff. The only restriction you had, I think, was like Mewtwo and Mew. But with all of those different Pokemon up in there, the tendency would be is to get the strong Pokemon like your Dragonites or something, or like the legendary birds, or if you happen to choose one of the starters, it made more sense to choose a Charizard right over Charmander though. So I always like using the best and later evolutions of the Pokemon within their stages and stuff. However, that didn't necessarily line up, at least within like the move sets that you were able to use, because obviously the better moves were used for the previous stage Pokemon. So Charmander had better, stronger moves overall in comparison to Charizard, who's naturally a stronger Pokemon, so they give them like some of the weaker moves. That was like the biggest annoyance for me. I was like, why in the world is this the case? So I guess they had to balance them out, so basically it incentivizes you to actually kind of use something like all the other Pokemon up in there outside of what is like the later stages of some of these Pokemon evolutions and stuff. So I think a good middle ground is sometimes to choose the middle evolution stage if there was one within like a 3-stage Pokemon and stuff. So yeah, I was just going through and doing all of this. Now, obviously, outside of the Game Boy interaction stuff, most of your time will be spent in the game within the Pokemon Stadium itself, and also the Road to the Elite Four Tower thing, though. So I'll go ahead and talk about the Road to Elite Four Tower. So within that, basically this allowed you to go through and challenge each one of the 8 different gym leaders, right? And you're able to go back and forth between challenging all the different ones. And then so you start off with Brock, you kind of end off with Giovanni and stuff. And then once you're done with that, then that opens up the Elite Four and stuff. And going through all the different gym leaders and stuff, since you had rental Pokemon and stuff, it wasn't necessarily a hard challenge. It was kind of nice just going through and playing through it though. However, the challenge doesn't necessarily start until you start with the Elite Four. And gosh by golly, that first woman that's in the Elite Four that like masters ice and whatever though, she's such a pain to get over, even in this one, as well as like my original run when I did Fire Red and stuff back in the day though. I don't know. It's just something about going through all 4 of these different people back to back. I feel like the Elite Four was way tougher then versus kind of where we at within the Pokemon series, where we're at right now though. Like they did a lot of modern convenience and stuff. It's easier getting through it and stuff. But with this one, it was all back to back. Yes, you got to heal your Pokemon along the way and stuff, but you had to choose like a unique team of 6 that were strong and capable of handling all these different Pokemon that you're about to fight off against these 4, including the champion Gary, who's at the very tail end now. And I think for the longest time, I think I was struggling on that. I can't remember to this day if I actually managed to beat the whole entire Elite Four. Like, I think I got close. I think I managed to get to the champion though, but it was always a hurdle and stuff. And I know my brother was like putting way more extensive hours in this game versus me though. And he's basically like the Pokemon guru, because like the only things he likes to play nowadays is like either if it's a Pokemon game, a Mario game, a Legend of Zelda game, and occasionally like some Mario Kart / Smash Brothers. And that's like all he really messes with. Occasionally he'll try something new like an Animal Crossing New Horizons or something like that though, but he's pretty grounded in the games that he plays though. But Pokemon Stadium, he put a lot of hours up in it, and he was even struggling for himself though. But I did know that one of the cool other things that you're able to do up in this game outside of the road to, the victory road, is all of the matches you're able to do within the Pokemon Stadium itself. Like they kind of branched them out into like different cups and stuff. So you didn't know exactly who you were actually facing off and stuff. And they had like certain themes for each cup though. So yeah, you're actually able to go through and do all of that as well though. So between the victory road stuff and basically the stadium itself, that's where most of your bread and butter was spent. There's also some other things you're actually able to do as well, such as like the practice grounds and stuff. And that's where you can kind of, get a second player involved. And then that's where like me and my brother would do like Pokemon face-offs and stuff. And we'll both choose 6 and stuff. And it was always tricky. And I remember hitting like them C buttons and stuff. So that way it's like, hey, you didn't know exactly who, at least the order lineup of what you actually selected when you're facing off against whoever else they happen to be playing right next to you though. But at least choosing the basic 6, they kind of saw what your team was like that, which I guess now in competitive Pokemon turns and stuff, like everybody and their mama gets to see what your team actually is. It's more so about the order. So some things still stay the same even to this day though. But yeah, we had a lot of different face-offs and stuff just kind of going back and forth though. So it was just nice to be able to do that on the practice grounds as well. But maybe you're not so much the biggest, battler, or you kind of want a different change of pace. They did also have in the game mini games, which I think it was like upwards like a couple of handful of different mini games that you're actually able to try out and play. I think was it like maybe 9 or so mini games or something like that though. Everything from like either racing, jumping over stuff, like Electros trying to charge up and stuff. I mean, there was like a wide variety of different things though. I think there was like a Clefairy one as well. And oh yeah, that Rattata Run one. Like I think that was like probably my best and favorite one right there. It was like, hey, try to beat me on that. You weren't gonna beat me on that sucker though. But yeah, the mini games and stuff was nice, change of pace while you're trying to go through and do all these battles and stuff, because every now and then you might get burned down and stuff. And I think that's like one of the few things that you're actually able to do with upwards up to 4 different players at the same time though. So some really great fun times right there. But obviously the king of all games in terms of Pokemon are the legendaries, in particular with Mewtwo, because Mewtwo was one of the Pokemon in this game that you did not have access to for the longest time unless you hit a bunch of prerequisites. And one of the couple of things you have to do is go through the whole entire Elite Four, beat them, beat the champion, and in the stadium mode itself, go through and beat all the cups. To this day, I don't think I've done that, or I don't even think my brother has done it though. But if you happen to do all of that stuff, once you manage to complete all of those series of tasks, then YouTube actually shows up in the sky. The sky happens to go dark and stuff like that, and then you're actually able to challenge them 6v1 and stuff, kind of like reminiscent of like the Pokemon movies and stuff, like those first few movies and stuff you had back in the day around the 2000s or so. But yeah, I never was able to actually pull that mess off. I would love to do that. Like I can do that on like, you know, the NSO service right now, just kind of slowly go through there, but it's a process to go through with all these rental Pokemon and stuff, and you know, slowly beat the Elite Four and then go back through and beat all the stadium cups though. It takes quite a bit of work, even though you're messing with rental Pokemon and stuff. And I always like the announcer and stuff when he's like announcing some of the, you know, the combat and stuff that you're doing between these different Pokemon, where he said like, oh, it's super effective, or he's like, taking down on the word go and all this stuff. I don't know, it's something iconic about that voice. Like that just made the Pokemon Stadium games what they are today though. So I was like, you know, those are some things I really love and appreciate, at least when in this game right here. And this was definitely a taste of what could Pokemon games look like in terms of them coming over to consoles. And it, you know, it just had to be several years and several generations later with the inclusions of, you know, Scarlet and Violet and stuff, Sword and Shield, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and the list kind of goes on and on. But yeah, this was definitely a first look at what Pokemon games could look like on the consoles though, because if you think back in those Game Boy eras and stuff, like you either were playing like on the black and white screen, or if you happen to be playing yellow on like a Pokemon on a Game Boy Color and stuff, then yeah, you can see a little bit of color up in there though. For a lot of people though, it wasn't a lot. This was a strong breath of fresh air for a lot of people, and it's like, oh man, this is what it looks like in color, and all of these different Pokemon animations and stuff. Like, because some of those things, animations with the Pokemon and stuff, still iconic to this day. Like, you know, seeing the move fly and stuff, and just kind of surveying the landscape and seeing where the Pokemon's at, the different camera shots. You know, those are some things I really love within the Pokemon game right here though. So, you know, that's basically all my thoughts on this one game for Pokemon Stadium though. But y'all gotta let me know down in the comment section down below what all of you think about Pokemon Stadium. Have you managed to go through and play it originally on the Nintendo 64, or have you started to dabble upon it just a little bit more now that it's offer within the Nintendo Switch online service though? Because if you hadn't, I said go ahead and do that though. And I don't know why it's taking the Pokemon company so long for them to actually give us like red, blue, yellow, gold, silver, crystal, and gosh, at this point, go ahead and give us ruby, sapphire, and emerald though. Because if there was a way how to incorporate those Game Boy games and having some inclusion and tie-overs to how they can potentially function and work within the Nintendo 64 games, it would be nice to go through and play red, blue, yellow and actually use those actual Pokemon you train with and use them within Pokemon Stadium. That will probably get me to actually, you know, really put some hours back in the original Pokemon Stadium all over again if I was able to pull this off though. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say within this one video right here. So if you really like this, make sure to go and hit that like button, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. So remember y'all, until our video I make next, see y'all.